Hi, I'm Kristian. I'm from Spotify. So we're just actually sitting right across the street from here. Great to come out, meet some of the guys in the local community. I'm going to tell you a story about continuous delivery on the mobile side from the Spotify world. And I'm going to begin from the beginning. So going back to the late 90s, you all remember what it looks like in the record stores, just before Christmas at that time. Late 90s, something happened. 99, something happened that kind of changed this. Napster came along. Later on, this is what it looked like. So in like 8 years, the global revenues in the industry dropped by 50%. And these two guys in Sweden saw this happening at the time and figured out that there must be a way to address this, and hence Spotify was born. We launched in 2008 in Sweden, first time. Came here a couple of years later, and currently we are in 58 markets worldwide. About 5 years ago, we were only 30 people in the product development part of the company based in Stockholm, and today we're something like 900 in that part of the company, and in total we're something like 2,000. So the growth has been pretty rapid. The office here is still small, but we're growing that. Something like 100 teams today in these 5 development sites. And I'd say that when we're looking at the Spotify organization, the team is definitely the most important organizational unit that we have. And when we talk about teams, we always want to see them being cross-functional and full stack. So a team would have everything they need, from an Android guy to an iOS guy to the designer and the product owner, back-end developer, etc. They self-organize to decide completely how they are to work and fulfill their mission on their own. They have end-to-end responsibility, so it's both building the system, make sure that it runs, but also that it's operational and up and running. And we're trying to create this feeling of a mini startup in these teams. So a couple of examples of teams. One team used to be focused on the browse part of the product. Another one, the playback piece of functionality. So that's making sure that music actually gets played. Another type of team here is the iOS container team, which is something I'll talk more about in a minute. What they do, which is mostly related to what we're talking about here today. Lastly, the artist team. So what's important here is that the team here is responsible for that part across all clients delivering on that mission. So again, we have the feature teams, or squads as we call them. Typically there's 1 to 2 devs per platform in each team. So 1 to 2 on iOS and 1 to 2 on Android. Committing daily to the mobile clients, and on each client there's also a platform team that are devoted to enabling the feature teams to be as effective as possible. And it's mostly their work that I'll talk more about here today, what they actually do. Then we have also a bunch of back-end infrastructure squads, like taking care of GCP stuff and data storage and that kind of things. So that's a quick history of the company and a bit of our thinking around building the organization. I also like to give you a short rundown on the story of continuous delivery on mobile. And I'm going to use our user growth as a basis to tell you that story. So this is what it's looked like. I actually saw this morning that our CEO released some new numbers today. So we're currently actually on 30 million premium subscribers. So the growth is looking pretty good, which is fun. So mobile, our first mobile client actually was released in 2009. But I'll start a little bit later. The first couple of years, mobile was really not the first-class citizen at all. It was all about desktop. And when it came to the stuff we're talking about here today, it was extremely immature. We was working on feature branches. Test automation was, we didn't even know what that was. And we released due to some big company events. There was no real thinking about how we did releases. Moving forward a little bit, started realizing that mobile is probably, it's taken on. Like people are actually buying smartphones, and that's going to be the new thing. So about this time, we started to realize that mobile is probably at least as important as desktop. We started to have some thinking around releasing, but then it was about feature sets determining release dates. So you can see what that leads to, right? Low predictability, scope creep, and since releases happen so seldomly, then people try to push a lot of stuff into the releases. They got even more delayed, and so on. You've probably seen that happening. Moving forward, we around this time, 2013, that's actually when I came into Spotify. I remember my first couple of weeks, I started talking to engineers about the kind of the state of test automation and so on. And I remember I worked with the Android team back then, and at that time when I came in, we had 80 unit tests on the platform. That's 80, and they weren't even running properly. That's where we were. And there was no tooling for that. We were very unsophisticated, basically. But we started talking about it, and we started getting serious about it. We, at that time, introduced a release manager role, so a person responsible of getting the release out, and we also introduced a cadence. So every third week, we're going to get a release out the door. We had someone who really pushed people to make that happen. It still didn't really work that well. People weren't used to that, so conforming to this new process was really painful. We missed a lot of releases, and we had extreme low predictability. Quality was basically still pretty much unknown. So 2014, 2013, it was still like 2013, 2014 here. We devoted some teams to this mission more clearly. Like, this is important. We need to get teams to focus on the problem of being releasable and to ship with quality and predictability. We put tests together with source code because they were decoupled. So quality and development was simply two different things earlier. And we started running and enforcing automated tests. We started doing nightly dog fooding. Somewhere around 2013, 2014. So it's not that long ago. And I'd say that probably last year or so, the organization really caught up with the intention here to get on board with the importance of being releasable. And here's when people really started getting serious about test automation. And we started shipping on like clockwork every second week. We shortened the cadence to 2 weeks, and the releases were actually going out every second week, which was good. And yes, then we started cutting branches automatically. Before that, we did it manually, and then it became an argument every time. And after we started doing it automatically, there was no discussion. We just did it. So where we are right now is that we're still on a 2-week cadence. Releases are predictable. We're shipping every second week. We still have, we cut the release branch. I'm going to talk a bit more about that in a minute. But when we cut the branch and when we actually ship it, that period of time is still a bit too long. There's a lot of bug fixing stuff going on there. So the current challenge is for us to shorten that period. And we also think that we want to move to shorter cycles because that's going to improve even more and get people's attention even more to this problem. So we're looking at least on Android now to actually try to move to 1 week cycles and see how that plays out. So developing the Spotify clients today, there's around 30 to 50 active developers per client a day currently across these 5 sites. We have one GHG project per client, so that's about 100 commits a day and 1,000 commits per release every second week. To get a pull request verified, it takes less than 10 minutes. That's our ambition. So have the automated tests run. And to have the merge, most of it is merged within a couple of hours. So that's with code reviews and all that stuff. And we moved from those 80 unit tests to something like 10,000 today. So it's a pretty decent improvement, at least. Looking at the testing strategy and the different levels, when developing in these feature teams, the engineers of course, they write the unit tests and do the manual testing. We have QAs in the team, and sometimes they will pair up and do work together with the engineers to test stuff, but pretty often they are actually working down here when it's merged and doing more like exploratory testing. When it comes to pre-commit tests, it's again, we're aiming at 10 minutes, so doesn't take too long. So that's still kind of lightweight. This testing is done through using emulators and doing some like really high level, just like log in, click through the views, and make sure that the high level stuff is working. Then most of the kind of integration testing happens after merge. So the build verification test, and we're aiming to have that take no more than 1 hour. And then we do the more the manual testing and some of the tests that take longer, like performance and stress testing, exploratory testing, etc., is done before we release now every second week. That's on a very high level, the testing strategy. So releasing. This is the current cycle. So everybody works off a master. Every night we push the release to our employees. So we dog fooding there. You can, if you want, you can get every build onto your device, but most of our employees get it nightly. Then we do a beta release after. So we cut the branch again every second week. And so this is the release branch here. We do a beta release at the same time to our beta community. And then actually that full release, this is probably where we would want it to be, but it's more like it's happening here. It takes usually up to almost 2 weeks before we actually push it. So it happens just before we cut the next release branch. The release branch only accepts bug fixes. So after we cut it, that's the only thing that we accept. And the teams that I mentioned that are looking after the platform, they are also doing the releases. So they are monitoring this stuff as well and helping out. And sometimes we still have, obviously, conversations with feature teams wanting to push other things onto the release branch. And, sometimes we make that happen too. But generally, speaking, the rule is only bug fixes there. So the nightlies are distributed through Google Play and through Crashlytics on iOS. This is a great way to get a really bought-in user group to actually, and we all are, most employees at Spotify are power users and use it quite a lot, so we actually get some good input here. When it comes to the beta release, it's still Google Play, and we use TestFlight. on iOS. We have a beta forum where we get input from the users. This release is, for us, it's actually to a very high degree about getting crash reports in and getting a lot of usage on the clients so we can address crashes. We get some UX issues as well, but it's, for us, it's actually mostly the crashes. Then we do the full release every second week again. Google Play Store, there we can do the gradual rollout. On iOS, as you know, it's not possible. So when we have enough usage on the beta version, then we push the actual release. So that's what the cycle looks like at the moment. And again, we are aiming to go down to shorter cycles, 1 week. The big struggle is right now to shorten this period of time to stabilize the release candidate, basically. And to do that, I already told you that we, a while back, formed teams around focusing on this problem. And this is one of the tribes, as we call it at Spotify, called App Development Productivity. There's a group of 40 people, 5 teams. So there's 1 team per platform at the moment, and a team that's focused on the build systems and continuous integration stuff. And what we did about half a year ago was that we wanted to figure out, like, how can we shorten the cycles, and what's the biggest bottlenecks right now, what are the biggest problems. So we did a kind of thorough investigation, both subjectively and objectively. Mostly we asked the developer community inside Spotify, what's the biggest pain right now? What can we do to get better at shipping mobile? And this is what we got. So the by far biggest problem in our developer community, this was done in October last year, was flakiness. And it's funny because it was framed here as Team City flakiness, but that wasn't really true. We learned. People generally kind of blame the infrastructure, but it's in reality it was a lot about actually poorly written tests. I'll talk a bit more about that in a minute. Then we have a pretty big problem on build times as well. So both the Team City builds being slow, queue times being long, local build times being pretty extensive as well. So these are some of the problems that we then took back to this tribe, App Development Productivity, and put some serious focus on. And I'll talk a little bit about that. So flakiness, I guess this is something we all encounter. And this is actually a picture from the office in Stockholm. This is one of the dashboards showing a set of tests. And I mean, you can see through the stickies here. It's I don't know, it's a Christmas tree behind there, right? And someone got so tired of it that they just put green stickies all over the screen and said, I fixed it, it's done. So that was kind of the level of trust people had in the TA, the test automation. So we realized that, I mean, with this, you won't get more traction into writing automated tests if this is what it is. People don't trust it. So we felt that it was really important. So what is it? Flaky test. It can be a lot of different things, I think. It can be about the infrastructure, and we have had some trouble there as well. But I think for us, actually, most of it has been unstable tests, and that's something that we have looked into a lot to try to address. And again, why is it bad to have that Christmas tree? Well, if people don't trust the test automation base you have in place, then you will get the broken window syndrome, and people will stop writing tests. And to become really fast, we need more of that. So people stop trusting the whole system. So what we did was one of the teams focused on the build systems. They set up this. This is work in progress very much, but capturing the output from Team City or the whole CS system in terms of logs and test results, build results. So they're building now what they call ODNI. We'll see if we can open source it later on. I don't know, but this is basically a framework to take all of this stuff and visualize test results to be able to spot flakiness and other problems. They're thinking about more kind of smart alerting. So, for example, being able to tell a team or an engineer that this performance test is showing that your performance has dropped 10%, and at the same time these 10 unit tests seem to fail. That might be related. What do you think? And so we're looking into doing more stuff like that there. And the output right now, again, this is very much work in progress, but this is where they are, and this is a really neat view actually. So this is showing our iPhone client, and this is every build, and this is some of the tests, of course, and you can see whether it passes or whether it's not. And what's interesting here, I mean, halfway through the two top rows, you can see that something is probably broken. It's failing repeatedly a bunch of times. So something probably happened that actually broke the test, so we need to fix that. Then we have down here, row 4 and 5, these little buggers. That's pretty interesting to look into, whether, this might be a fail, but it might also be a matter of a flaky test. And getting this view and being able to present it back to each feature team is super helpful for them to address this and look at this and see, is this a poorly written test or was this a real failure? So this is something we're doing right now and pushing that out to the feature team so they can own their own tests and take the flakiness problem seriously. And we've already actually addressed quite a lot of the flakiness issues, so it's looking much better now, and I think it's largely about this, giving the tools and the infrastructure to teams to take on the problems themselves. So build times, that's another thing we took on in this tribe, and one of the teams really wanted to own the build times problem, so they also started out by measuring. So this is also work in progress. This is what's happening right now. This is just from the other day. So number of local builds per day. We didn't have this data visualized like this before, and that's also helpful to see how many builds do we do. It's a couple of hundred every day, and then starting to measure what the actual build time is for every developer. And they've done some stuff already with Ccache on iOS and predexing on Android, and already moved actually the build times to roughly 50% of where we were a couple of months back. So getting them focused on this has been super helpful. Lastly, releasability. I already talked a bit about that and our struggles of shortening the time from feature complete to actual release, and this is the reality. So FC to RC, that's when we cut the branch to when we push it. So when it's under 14, the blue line there, then we're hitting our 2 weeks. And when it's above, then we're not. So as you can see, we're usually hitting the 2 weeks. The red part here is the gradual rollout on Android. So here it takes 6 days to roll it out from the first user to all users. So that's what it is right now. And the blue line is basically about fixing bugs on the release candidate, and bugs that we have discovered late then. So all this push on test automation is essentially about shortening that. And we believe that by actually shortening it to a week, we will get more attention to this problem. It will hurt more, and therefore we think that people will put more into writing tests and being more swift in addressing problems. One part of this is this dashboard that we recently set up for the feature teams, which is showing the current release, so the release candidate, the release branch, and below it's the master branch. And you can see here the number of bugs. So how many bugs do we have open? How many crashes do we have currently? And how many streams do we have on this candidate? We're also showing top blocking teams. So who's blocking the release right now? Call it public shaming, if you will. I don't know, but it has been pretty helpful. These dashboards are up now all over the office, so you can see. And this has really helped putting the attention onto addressing these problems. So this is a Kibana dashboard. It's a pretty neat one, and this is definitely helping us to shorten this cycle as well. So I think throughout these years, one super important thing here is to get people dedicated to target this problem space. That has been a game changer for us. I mean, we've talked about this for quite some time, but when we spun up these teams devoted to the mission of fixing delivery on mobile, things have started to move much faster. I mean, it's common sense, I suppose, but I think I've seen before like attempts being made in different ways, but this was a game changer for us. And I think it comes down to behavior more than technology. It's about getting people to change behaviors, write more tests, fix stuff faster, etc. But you can use technology to help changing behavior. So weed out bottlenecks one at a time. Figure out what the biggest pain is when it comes to being releasable and to ship often, and address those seriously. And for us, it's as you've seen, a lot of the approach that we're taking is visualize the problem, create these dashboards, push it back out to the feature teams that are doing the actual work, and enable them to address the problems themselves. We don't want to have an organization on the side that's fixing problems for people, for engineers in the teams, but we are there to help them fix their own problems so that we become faster. So we're a lot about tooling and dashboards and infrastructure that enables them. That's that. Thank you. Can I elaborate on release beta when we have enough usage? Yeah. So we're currently, so that's when we have enough usage on the beta. And that today means 50,000 streams on the client. So 50,000 songs played. And we're looking at crash rates mostly there on those 50,000 streams. So that has to be below a certain bar. So that's what we're looking at right now. Yeah. How do we measure the build times? The local ones. I actually don't know. Kasha, do you know? Sorry. Any thoughts on the? So I mean, we're looking into it for sure, and what we can release out of this stuff. And I mean, generally speaking, I think that's something we can do more of. So I think, yeah, 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 yeah. No, I mean, if we can open source stuff, then we should. I think that's general thinking. We don't have a roadmap or plan right now in place for this stuff, if that's what you're asking, but we're looking into it, sure. So are we still using feature branches? It's pure, well, I would claim it's pure master, but I can't guarantee it. I mean, yeah, it has been a massive shift. Previously, most of the work were done on feature branches, but now it's basically only on master, yeah. Okay. 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 All right. That's it. Thanks a lot. Thank you.